Take it away, Kris.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to start off with building a product is very difficult. How many product people do we have in here today? So I have a few, so I'm sure you all realize that when you actually build a product, it's really difficult. It's not just about the technology, because the technology bit can be the easy bit. Of course, that is in itself very difficult, but you need to build something that is marketable, it's got unique selling points, and it solves a problem for a customer, and it solves a problem that they're willing to pay for that as well. So I'm going to talk about how we in Secure Broadcast kind of balance our tech, customer, and business requirements when we're building our product. So for a bit of context, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to where we were a few years back, where we are now, and where we're going, and that'll hopefully frame why we make the decisions that we do. So, what actually do we do? Does anyone here know what Secure Broadcast does? Okay, so we're a media tech company that enables the secure end-to-end encrypted transfer and storage of media assets, and we empower companies to become their own media platform. So taking the power away from the external media companies and giving that back in-house as well. So we're all about the creation, management, and distribution of branded content in a controlled environment. So our story so far is that the company was started around 6 years ago, which of course in startup land is a long time ago. But the company started off with the founder and co-founder coming from the enterprise world and the professional film world. So two very different worlds coming together. And what they decided to do was work on a patent. And they patented our player technology, which I'll touch on in a minute. And it was that gap in the market of film production in Hollywood and the corporate market. And the idea behind this was to essentially remove the need for the co-founder to have a job, to remove the Hollywood production side of things or that expensive external production from the world of corporate video. So what we built was a new type of video, and we feel that this actually redefines how video works. And real quick, this is what we've built. We have abstracted the data away from video. So traditional video and video in itself at the minute is shooting video just like we are here, bringing that to Final Cut Pro or iMovie, and then doing all your video edits there. So what we've actually decided to do was completely flip that process on its head. The traditional video creation route was centralized in terms of it was done on the laptop or Mac or Windows PC where the video editing was taking place. And we actually flipped that around to make the data and the video dynamically connect and render on the client device, so decentralized video rendering. So what that means we can do is we can instantly brand video without the end user having to do anything. So they can shoot video and it'll instantly be branded with on-brand and pre-approved branding. That's kind of the context of where it all started. And of course, this needed a shitload of R&D. This was not an easy thing to do. Current video has been like that for a long time for a reason. This is not easy to do. With mobile technology coming on a long way in the last 5 and 6 years, this has allowed us to be able to achieve this, and this required us to work for 18 months just purely on R&D, improving the concepts of the player, this new type of video, and building up a video platform in itself. So a lot of R&D and validating our initial concepts and adding value to the patent itself. So for a bit of context, this was a team in 2016 in post-Brexit day, us all holding our Irish passport application forms. So it was a very small team. We had the core ideas, what we wanted to achieve. We didn't scale out massively. We kept it tight and proved the core concepts. And from that stage, when we proved the concepts and we had a clear vision of what we wanted to do and how we were going to achieve this, the next step after that for us, and I'm sure everyone else in the startup world, is the knowledge that you need customers. So it's great to have this. It was great for us to have the space and the engineering capability to do all of this research and development and prove the concepts of the patent. That was really fun from an engineering perspective. But from a business perspective, you need customers, you need people using and buying and paying for your product. So as an engineering team, absolutely myself included in this, we're awful at making customer-driven decisions. especially this is for the corporate market. This is for blue chip companies to take our technology and use in a corporate video sense. So who were we to tell them how they should use our product? We needed their feedback with our initial business values as well to be coupled together so we could actually make something that gives real value to the customer. So the need for customers here was to validate our idea against the market that was out there. And this is where we wanted to be. Because of the whole technology side of things and the patent and the new type of video, that's why tech features so much here. And I'm sure when you're building something exciting yourself, you want to really focus on tech as well. We also wanted to have, of course, customers and then the core business values. And I'll come back onto the business values later on. So previous to the, not necessarily epiphany, but knowledge that we needed to go get customers, we were around 45% tech, 45% perceived business value, and around 10% customer interaction there. So very heavily focused on the tech, and we knew we needed to go towards customers, and this is where we wanted to be. So my advice would be to target the key clients. When you're going after a customer base, you know what your product does, you have a fair idea of what problem it solves, and I think it's very important to target your key clients. What you could end up doing is a bit of a scattergun approach and try and get every single client possible, not kind of caring, you just want to get their money in the door. But what happens there, you may get bogged down, especially like us in that situation. We were in a discovery phase, and we needed to work out, are we going in the right direction? We knew we needed to make a few changes, but we kind of had an idea we're on the right path. So we knew we had to target our key clients. And for us, we picked out the key sectors that we wanted to be in and push on the next several years. And we pushed forward on securing 2 or 3 key clients in the key sectors. And those sectors for us were education, pharma, and professional services. So after you get your key customer, you have to listen to them. There's no point spending all this effort getting your customer and then just ignoring them. That adds no value whatsoever. And at the very start, when we got our first initial customers and our customers were telling us, we actually really want to do this, and that was completely against what we stood for, we kind of got a bit uptight at times and thought, you're using the product wrong. But actually, they were solving business needs with our product, and they had a very valid use case for how they were using our technology. So we had to make not huge pivots by any stretch of the imagination, but some small adjustments in terms of how our product should be faced and how we should market it to get our future clients as well. So it's really important to listen to your clients. And something that it's a kind of a mantra that we have in Secure Broadcast is to love your customers, especially your initial customers. If you show them a lot of love and spend a lot of time with them and learn from them, they'll be on your side and they'll back your journey and they'll support you going forward. And that's something that's really worked out well for us. We have some customers on board that massively help us out and help push us forward in the kind of the vision that we're trying to achieve here. Another role when you get your first key customer is what we call a product champion, and that's someone who will take your product and run with it in the organization. And they're someone who is on the ground using it day to day, and they'll give you insightful feedback, and if you build up the right relationship with that person, you'll be able to go on site with them, see how they're using the product, and kind of see how they're using it day to day, and then work out what they're doing, if it's right or wrong, and how you can change your product in that nature. Of course, you have to say no to customers. Just because 1 or 2 people are shouting really loudly about one feature doesn't mean you should do that. As a product, you'll have key values and what you're trying to achieve. And if people are shouting about one thing in particular, which moves you away from your core message, just because they're shouting loud doesn't mean you should develop that. It's all about the value versus effort. If 2 people or 3 people are shouting about something and it's relatively small, maybe half a day's development or 1 day development, we might put it in, but you still need to think about the support in the future. You've got to support that feature forever. And I think you need to take cold showers on features that are requested, and any feature at all in the whole product lifecycle, it's important to take a cold shower on that and make sure you're making the right call and it's not a decision made in the heat of the moment. So we feel that each request should be validated and discussed, and even if it is your client is bringing in the most amount of revenue and it's a person using the product the most, it's still important to be able to say no. And if you say no to a customer, you don't just say no and walk away. You explain the reasons why. There may be workarounds to the problem they're having as well. So it's just about building that relationship and letting them down gently, so to speak, while still saying no. And for this recently, pitching to some people who are interested in what we're doing in secure broadcast, they were very pleased to hear that we say no, and we're happy to say no, because if you say yes to everything, you can't be all things to all people. And I think that's really important as a startup and a small team, that you can't stretch yourself too thin. So say you've accepted a feature that a customer's requested and you want to release that. How do you validate that feature that's went out there? So prior to our feature being released that we know customers are asking for, we try and define what is a success. What does success mean for this feature? Should they be doing X, Y, or Z once this is released? And we use that to try and measure the success of that released feature. And we validate that again with the product champion, because that's someone internally that we've built a relationship with and can trust. So it's all about trying to validate your feature requests there. And it's important to use as many metrics as possible. I know this is a very well-defined topic in the world of software development, but it's even the human aspect in that. Does this piece of software or does this feature make this person happier using your product? And that's a metric that we try and use internally. So I've been talking about business requirements. I think it's obvious what tech requirements are, and it's obvious what customer requirements are, but what are business requirements? And for us, and I'm sure anyone building product, you'll have your core ideal product of what you actually want to deliver. Why did you start on this journey? So you'll have a core concept of what you want to deliver. And for us, that was a B2B product that was driven for enterprise and all about control. And it's very important to validate any feature request based on your initial core values as a company. For us, sales and marketing people are the key users at the minute for our product. And what they want is to be able to quickly create content and push it out there. They don't really care about the control, and they would like us to relax our control mechanisms a lot more. But that's core to our business. That's one of our main USPs. It's all about control. And it's the CEOs and the high-level people in companies love control, and they don't want to relinquish that, especially in video. Video is very powerful. I'm sure you've seen the power of social media and understand that. If something gets out there that shouldn't have and didn't go through the right management processes, people could lose their jobs, stock could plummet, etc. So it's all about control for us, and we've had to push back a lot on ease of use features, just to go back to the core concept of why we're building this, and to always keep check on that as well. So technical debt. Technical debt is, if anyone is a developer here, you will very much know about technical debt. And it's easy for people in product and high up companies to say, let's just do this later. Let's brush under the carpet, let's do it later. And I'm suspect for it myself, and we try not to be. But we have processes in place to make it that we don't just brush technical debt under the carpet. And one of the first things in terms of technical debt is trying to convey the value of tech debt up the chain. If you say, I need to spend 3 weeks on this piece of tech debt, of course someone in product is going to say no, unless you can convey the value of that. So I think it's very important to say the reasons why you should do this. And one main example for us was to start off with doing small chunks of technical debt and then conveying that value back up the chain to say, we did this, which allows us to do that. The same way as when developing features. Even as a more junior engineer, if you're starting out, you still can convey the value of technical debt to either senior developers or people in product or further up the chain there as well. So I think it's very important to convey the value of tech debt so it then becomes a real thing in terms of your release cycle and strategy there. So what tech debt do you pay? If you, like us, inevitably we have a large system, and tech debt inevitably over time grows and grows, and unless you do something about that. So about 14 months ago, we sat down as a development team and said, right, we know we have technical debt. What is the main technical debt we have here? So we listed out in a backlog all the items of technical debt that we felt we had in our system at that time. So that then was a rather large list, to be fair. Like any technical system, big and small things in there as well. So after that, we then prioritized that backlog, just like a product team would prioritize the list of features for a quarterly release. And then we decided as a tech team and voted together of what tech debt should we tackle that sprint. So the whole tech team is on board with what you're trying to achieve there. So if I'm really passionate about fixing some UX engine that's kind of out of date and a bit flaky, but the rest of the team want to do something else, then that's fine, because everyone as a team agrees on that, and it's a bit more of a democracy there. And I think that's really important, to get buy-in for your team and make them understand the decisions that are made. And for us, listing out all the tech debt and prioritizing that massively helped us work out what we should actually do. And for some concept of how much time we actually spend on technical debt, over the last 2 quarters, we spent about 25% of our engineering time on tech debt, because we feel it's really important. Okay, so there was our business requirements, our tech requirements, and our customer requirements. So how do we actually make decisions? So we all sit. We sit in the dark room. It looks like it's still working here.
Sorry?
It looks like it's still connected here.
Projection?
Yeah.
It's not.
Actually,
That might be the problem.
fantastic. Bear with me, trying to find some.
We can edit this bit out of the video. I'll try disconnecting and reconnecting. Oh. Maybe it's a slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's start again. So how do we make decisions as a team? We all sit down at the table and argue until all but one of us gives up. Of course we don't do that, and I hope none of you do that, but I've seen it in the past. So the way we make decisions is we have a product team. As a startup, we don't have a product manager, and maybe we're at the size where we may need that person, but as a small company starting out, it can be hard to convey the value of a product manager, and I know personally they're of huge value, but if we're trying to do a lot of engineering and push a lot of the R&D and the tech, if you're weighing up a developer versus a product manager, at times it may seem more likely let's go for the developer. So what we have done is we have the product team, which is made up of marketing, sales, tech, design, and R&D. So that's 5 of us. And we all sit down, we have a Trello board, and we have a list of discussion points. And we have a 1-hour meeting each week where we go through all the discussion points. And whether that is customer requirements, some tech debt we need to solve, and the reasons for that, customer requirements, or internal ideas, because we use our application a lot internally, and we use ourselves as a customer, which I think is really important as well, if it's possible with your product to kind of eat your own dog food, essentially. So I think that's really important, and that's where a lot of the requirements come from us. So we sit down, we go through the prioritized Trello board, and we say, should this go in the roadmap? And if so, where in the roadmap? Or is this going back in the pile for discussion later because it's not quite the right time? And then the third thing, which I think is really interesting, and we have something called sandpaper sessions. And that's if we can't decide what we do with that feature at that time, we then think, who is the best people to have in the room for that? And maybe it's a feature that's for marketers, so we get our marketing team in the room, and maybe I step out of that, and a few of maybe design and R&D step out of that because they don't need to be in the room. And it's all about getting the right people in the room at the right time. So in that sandpaper session, will smooth over the edges of that feature and report back to the product team their findings, and then we can then either decide to put that in the roadmap or park it for later. And again, saying no in product meetings is important, and taking cold showers on decisions, because there's been times where we've been very hyped up about a feature, we think this is the next best thing, then we come in the next day and think, actually it's probably not the next best thing, we should probably park that and come to that later, just because we're passionate about it in the moment. So how do we stop feature creep? If we're meeting as a product team once a week and we're coming up with all the next best ideas, how do we decide not to push that into the next release? So the way we do this is by our release cycle. And we've put a lot of work into our release cycle, and we hope that this solves a lot of the feature creep coming in. So this is our release cycle, very professionally drawn diagram. So we start with a predefined quarterly backlog. which then is there at the start of the sprint. And this is a transparent backlog that anyone in the company can go and look at any time. So everyone in the company knows what the development team will be developing. And that also includes marketing materials and sales strategies and all of that. So that's all very open and transparent within the company. So we predefine that before the start of the quarter. We go into 6 2-week sprint cycles and push out the beta at the end of every sprint cycle. And of course, there's the feedback loop and refinement at the end of every sprint. Because we use our own app a lot internally, we can give a lot of feedback as we're using it ourselves. We then have a 1-week stability, just to make sure it's right to go to customers, and then we push it out the door, and then we start again, and we do that 4 times a year. So that all sounds pretty good, but we fucked up a lot during the way. It was not easy to get there, and we're far from perfect right now. We need a lot of refinement, and we've done a lot of refinement. So I'll start where we were, say 16 months ago. Our development cycle 16 months ago used to be 2-week development cycle, 1-week QA, push to beta, 3 weeks later, push to release. That was what it was supposed to be. What it actually was, 2-week sprint cycle, you didn't get some features finished, so you did them in QA week. Then the app wasn't that stable because you didn't have QA week. Then the sprints just went on, and then our release cycle was all over the show. It was either 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 8 weeks, or at one point it was 12 weeks somehow. So I have a lot of empathy for people in that position because it is difficult, but we realized that that wasn't working for us. So we decided to sit down and have a kind of pretty much a retrospective of our release cycle and how can we improve things. And we do that constantly, and we're constantly trying to improve. So at the end of every quarter, we have a product retrospective and sit down as a product team and work out what went well, what didn't go well, and what can we do going forward. Because we've made a lot of mistakes, as every company does make a lot of mistakes, but we always want to refine and try and improve stuff. And we never want to do stuff just because it was done like that in the past. And I think it's always important to reflect and never think that you're perfect, because you never will be. And it's always about trying to strive to be as close to perfect as possible. So some advice and lessons over the past year. One of the main ones for me is transparency. And I think with the open backlog of features that we're delivering and keeping that open lets everyone know what we're developing. At times in the past, it was week to week, you didn't know what you're going to be developing. So I think it's nice to have a clear idea in your head, even as an engineer, what you're building for the whole quarter, because that may affect some of the engineering decisions that you have in sprint 1 for a feature that you're probably going to do in sprint 6. So it's great to have that bigger picture as well. Transparency in terms of product decisions, I think, is very important, and I hope all the team respects it as well, which is we let everyone know why we're doing a feature and why we're not doing a feature. So if someone comes to me really enthusiastic about, I want to build feature X, and I say no and walk away, that person's demotivated and thinks, why should I bother coming up with ideas for this again if Kris is just going to say no? Because that's really demotivating. So what we try and do a lot is explain the reasons why we're not doing that and what we're doing instead, and give some context to that as well. And there may be some some small features that take a lot of effort to deliver for very little value. So it's stuff like that, and conveying that back to the whole team so everyone is bought in on the one vision, one team, one vision. I think it was Joan's slide earlier. I think that's really important. And ensure your team has buy-in in what you're building and everyone is moving in the same direction there. And of course there's disagreement in teams, but it's about sitting down with someone and explaining the reasons why we're doing something and not doing something, and being really honest and open about that as well. Because we're all in a company, you're working towards one goal. You shouldn't be split, and I think it's really important to keep the communication stream open in that way. And if a decision can't be made in a meeting, that's okay. None of us want to be sitting in 1 3-hour meeting and come to a decision because we're all exhausted. That's never going to get us in the right place. So it's okay to decide, let's cut an end to this meeting and come back tomorrow and have a fresh perspective on this problem. And you may come up with ideas, you may talk in the corridor with someone about it, and then when you come back the next day, it hopefully makes it a lot easier to come to a decision in that meeting, because it's all about getting the right people in the meetings at the right time and knowing the value of that meeting and the cost that has to the company as well. So that's me. Has anyone any questions? Yeah.
Do you have your patent yet?
Yes.
Oh, you got through?
We have it in several countries at the minute, and it's pending in a lot.
So under 7 years, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. We got it a few years back.
Really?
In the UK first, yeah.
How quick? How do you get it so quickly?
Good lawyers. Yeah.
Previously you talked about where you were 6 months ago where you had the idea of this is what our cycle should look like, this is how much better we should be doing testing,
Yeah.
release, and it always drags on. I'm kind of in that situation at the moment, and sort of, do you think there's a point where everything needs to stop?
So
Irrespective, or
your question is, how did I know 16 months ago where we should go?
so generally what would your advice be for
Yeah.
another team or collection of people working together who are in that scenario?
Okay, so if I'm in that scenario again, what advice would I give? So the advice I would give is, well, from our own experience, 16 months ago, we didn't know where we wanted to go, or we didn't know a clear strategy to get there, but we just knew something wasn't working. And I think it's really important to reflect on what you're doing and ask yourself, is this the best possible us? And are we working best as a team? And if you're not high up the chain, you can't make the big calls. It's saying small things first, saying, this isn't working, can we try this, can we try that? And I think it's all about experimenting and then reflecting and quickly iterating over your processes. Just like you may iterate with your feature development, you should iterate with your processes as well and get something that works for the team. Because what works for us probably won't work for yourself and your company. Anything else?
Just a quick question. You talked about doing a retrospective on your build process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious about how you track information from build to build. Do you have a particular tool or process or system you have for being able to collect that information where you can summarize these and make decisions based on it?
So for us, the idea of retrospectives is to have actions come out of it. So we say what went well, what didn't go well, and what should we change in the future. So we take all those cards from the retrospective and then come up with actionable items after that. And then we track those actionable items in a Trello board and then constantly reflect on those every few weeks as a team and say, are we tackling this or has this been tackled? And then we move that along a kind of Kanban board of we should to do this, or we're doing this, or this is done and we're happy with that. So we track, we pull out as many actionable items as possible from retrospectives. And that's kind of the outtake from that. Thank you very much.